I was never the favorite child. Even as a little girl, I learned that quiet obedience didn't earn praise, it earned invisibility. My brother Dean was the star, the golden boy, the one they always believed in, no matter how many rules he broke. I left home at 19 with 2 suitcases and a scholarship. No one helped me pack. No one drove me to campus. Meanwhile, Dean got a used car when he turned 18. Because he needed it to find work, my father had said, even though he never kept a job longer than a month. Still, I didn't resent him. Not back then. I believed if I just worked hard enough, one day they'd see me. One day, they'd be proud. Now, at 34, I was managing partner at a mid-sized accounting firm, living in a modest home with a herb garden and a dog named Luna. I wasn't rich, but I was steady, safe, boring, as Dean once called it. I hadn't spoken to my parents in over a year when they called. I remember the way my mother's voice cracked. "Sweetheart, we need your help," she said. My heart dropped. I thought someone had died. It was worse. Dean had been arrested, again. This time for something serious. Not just drunken fights or unpaid fines. This time, it was wire fraud. Over $200,000 stolen from elderly clients through a fake investment firm he and his friend had cooked up. "He didn't mean to hurt anyone," my mother whispered. "He just got in over his head." "He needs the best lawyer we can get," my father added, his voice sharp. "We know you have the means." I hesitated. Every instinct in me said no. But guilt is a cruel thing, especially when you've been waiting your whole life to feel like you matter. I agreed to help. I wired the retainer, $40,000, to a defense attorney the next morning. Dean didn't call to thank me. Neither did my parents. Instead, my mother sent me a short message. "We'll never forget this." But they did. Only 2 weeks later, I stopped by their house for dinner. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, wine. Instead, I heard my father call me a useless daughter when he thought I wasn't listening. "She's got no family loyalty," he muttered to my uncle in the kitchen. "Always acting like she's better than us." My hands trembled on the wine glass. I bit my tongue so hard, I tasted blood. That night, I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't call to explain. I just made a quiet decision. That would be the last dollar Dean ever got from me. 3 days passed before the first phone call came. It was my mother. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice tight, "there's a court date next week, and the attorney said Dean needs more prep time. He's asking for another advance." I stirred my tea slowly, sitting at my kitchen table in silence. "I'm not sending more money, Mom." The pause on the line stretched too long. I could hear her breathing, trying to decide which version of herself to show me. She settled on guilt. "You can't just abandon your own brother, not when he's facing 10 years. "I didn't abandon him," I said, calmer than I felt. "I paid for the best lawyer in town. I did what I could." "You paid once," she snapped. "But this isn't over in a month. That's not how the system works. He needs support. He needs to take responsibility." Another pause. Then the voice she used when I was a child and forgot to say thank you for dinner. "You've always thought you were better than us, living in your big house, judging us like we're trash." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." She hung up before I could answer. The next call came from Dean himself, the first time I'd heard his voice in over a year. I answered out of pure instinct. "Look," he said, without so much as a hello, "I know they guilted you into that lawyer, but if you're gonna do something, do it right." I blinked. "Are you serious?" He scoffed. "I'm not guilty, okay? The guy who set it all up, Randy, he's the one who pushed everything. I was just the face. I didn't know what I was signing. But your name's on the documents." "I didn't read them," he shouted. God, you sound just like the prosecutor. You stole from retirees, Dean. No, Randy did. I just introduced people. He said it was legit. If I go down for this, it's because no one's helping me. I did help. With $40,000. You never even said thank you. Silence. Then, coldly, if I go to prison, that's on you. I hung up. That night, I pulled out the box I kept in my closet. It held every birthday card I ever got from my parents. Most unsigned. The one with a torn $5 bill. The one that said, "Love you, I guess," in my mother's handwriting. Why had I spent so long trying to earn something they never planned to give? I stared at the photo of Dean and me from high school. He had his arms slung around me, grinning. I remember that day. He'd stolen the dress I was going to wear to senior pictures and cut it into strips for a prank. I'd cried in the bathroom for an hour. Everyone thought it was funny. The next day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, I'm Kendra. I'm Dean's fiancé. I think we should talk." We met at a cafe on the corner of Elm and 7th, a neutral ground far from both our homes, and more importantly, far from my parents' judgment. Kendra was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with tired eyes that didn't match her fresh makeup or carefully styled hair. She ordered chamomile tea. I didn't bother ordering anything. "I appreciate you meeting me," she said, voice shaky. "Dean's not exactly easy right now." I leaned back, arms crossed. "He's never been." She gave a weak smile. "I guess not." We sat in silence for a moment. She fiddled with the tea bag string, winding it around her finger. "I'm not here to ask you for money," she said finally. I needed to talk to someone who knows him, really knows him." I didn't respond. I let her fill the silence. "He told me you paid for the lawyer, that you're bailing on him now?" She looked up at me. "But he also told me you were heartless when you were kids, that you'd lock yourself in your room and act like you didn't have a brother." I laughed. Not a joyful sound, more like something dry breaking in my chest. "He used to steal from me, my lunch money, my clothes. Once, he convinced my 8th grade teacher I was cheating on homework so I'd get detention and miss a field trip." Kendra blinked. "I didn't know that." "Of course not. He's always been the victim in his stories." She nodded slowly. "He told me Randy framed him, that he didn't know anything was illegal." I studied her. "Do you believe him?" "I used to." Her voice cracked. "But he lied to me about a lot of things. I found an account, one he didn't tell me about, with thousands in it. Transferred the day after the arrest." I stared. "Thousands?" She nodded. "Almost 15, hidden under a fake name." I confronted him. He said it was a backup plan, in case the legal stuff dragged out. "Did he offer to use it for his defense?" She laughed bitterly. "Number he said he needed it, in case I bailed on him. That he couldn't count on anyone." A waitress passed by, and Kendra wiped her eyes quickly. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "His mom keeps calling me, saying I need to be loyal, that this is what real women do, stand by their men. But I feel like I'm losing myself." I placed my hand over hers. "Then maybe it's time to stop standing and start walking." She looked at me, stunned. Then quietly, she nodded. "I wanted to believe him," she said. "But maybe some of us are just born to clean up someone else's mess. And maybe I'm done doing that." She left before I did. I sat there a while longer, staring out the window at nothing in particular. The cracks in Dean's story weren't just visible now, they were spreading. That evening, I received another message, from Dad. "We need to talk, it's urgent. Come by tonight." I pulled into my parents' driveway just after sunset. The porch light flickered, as if unsure whether to welcome me or warn me. I hadn't stepped foot in that house in over a year. Not since the last Thanksgiving, when my mother had cried over the cranberry sauce because Dean didn't show up, again, and somehow, that had turned into my fault. The door opened before I even knocked. My father stood there, arms crossed. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just felt taller. "We need to talk," he said without a hello. My mother was already sitting at the dining table, a half-drunk glass of red wine in front of her. She didn't look up when I entered. "I got your message," I said, closing the door behind me. "What's so urgent?" "You can't just drop Dean's defense," my father snapped. "I didn't drop it. I funded it. Fully. More than most sisters would." "Well, now the lawyer's talking about backing out," my mother added, eyes on her wine. "Says Dean's not being cooperative, that he won't tell the full story." I shrugged. "That's not my problem." "It is your problem," my father growled. "If he goes down, he'll take this whole family's name with him. People talk. They remember." "And what would they remember about me, Dad?" I asked. "The daughter who paid in silence, or the one you called useless behind her back?" His face twitched. My mother looked up sharply. "We were angry," she said. "It was a moment. You don't need to twist everything." "I'm not twisting anything. I'm just done pretending." My father stood abruptly, pacing. "Look, Dean made mistakes, but he's not evil. He's your brother. Family. You don't throw family away when things get hard." I let out a bitter laugh. "You did. Every time I needed you. Every time I begged for your attention and got a grunt in return. You tossed me aside so Dean could shine." Silence. "I'm asking you," my mother said softly. "Please, just a little more help. He needs to keep that lawyer. You can afford it." "That's not the point." "What is then?" "That maybe, for once, Dean should feel the consequences of being Dean." My father's jaw clenched. "He's scared. He's never faced real trouble before. He's 32. He's not a boy." A long, heavy pause filled the room. My mother looked away, and I realized she wasn't going to fight anymore. But my father, he wasn't done. "You know," he said quietly, "you always were good at pretending you were better. Smarter, colder. But you're just angry. That he got love, you didn't." My chest tightened. "I stopped being angry a long time ago," I whispered. "Now I'm just finished." I turned to leave. But before I reached the door, my mother said something that made me pause. "He's saying you were involved." I turned slowly. "What?" "In his statement, he said you helped set up the documents, that you looked them over and said they were clean." I stared at her, stunned. "That's a lie." "I know," she said, "but the lawyer won't, and the DA won't." My ears rang. "He's trying to drag me down with him. He's desperate." I looked at both of them and felt something crack. Not in anger, in clarity. Then I walked out. The next morning, I sat across from my supervisor at the firm, Margaret Holloway, a woman known for her sharp suits and sharper instincts. I hadn't planned to speak to her so soon, but after what my mother said, I couldn't risk being blindsided. "You're not under investigation," she said calmly, after I told her everything. "Not formally. No one's contacted the firm." I exhaled slowly. "But if he keeps pushing the story," she raised a hand, "then we'll deal with it. But I appreciate you telling me. Most people wouldn't." I couldn't take the chance. She studied me for a moment. "Do you know how many people come in here hiding things like this? Affairs, secret debts, family messes. But you—" She leaned forward slightly. "You've never given me a reason to doubt you. Don't start now." I nodded, throat tight. She slid a folder toward me. "You're good at what you do. But if this gets bigger, it might hit the firm's reputation. Just a warning." "Understood." Back in my car, I sat for 10 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I wasn't angry. I was tired. A bone-deep exhaustion that no sleep could cure. Dean hadn't just crossed a line. He'd obliterated it. That evening, Kendra showed up at my doorstep. Her mascara was smudged, and she carried a duffel bag. "I left him," she said simply. "I need a place for a few days, just until I figure things out." I opened the door wider. "Of course." She walked in like someone half awake. "He got angry when I asked about the money. Said I was just like you, cold, ungrateful." "I've heard that before." "I asked if what he said about you was true, about the documents. He didn't even try to lie well. He just said, 'She'll get over it.'" We sat on the couch in silence for a while. Luna, my dog, rested her head in Kendra's lap like she'd known her forever. "You don't owe them anything," Kendra said suddenly. "Not him. Not your parents. They all live in a world where you're just a tool." "I know," I whispered, "but it took me 30 years to see it." That night, she slept in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much further Dean would go. If he was willing to lie under oath, what else was he planning? The next morning, a plain white envelope was tucked into my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single page, a copy of a bank transaction, Dean's name, a transfer to someone named Russell Kane, $53,000. Handwritten in ink across the bottom, "Ask him who Russell is." The name Russell Kane echoed in my head like a warning bell. I didn't know him. I'd never met or heard of him. Not once in all the years Dean had roped others into his messes. But whoever sent me that note knew something, and they wanted me to follow it. I showed the envelope to Kendra over coffee the next morning. She paled when she read the name. "I've heard that name," she said slowly. "He's not one of Dean's friends, not exactly. More like a ghost. Dean mentioned him once when we were fighting about the money. Said he owed Russell more than I'd ever understand." I typed the name into a private business registry database my firm subscribed to. I'd used it a dozen times for background checks on clients. The result came up fast. Russell Kane, registered agent. 2 dissolved LLCs. 1 active, RK Investments Group, formed 3 years ago. Registered office, a strip mall in Barstow. "Barstow?" I muttered. "Dean hasn't been near Barstow in years." "Unless that's where Randy is," Kendra said quietly. The possibility made my blood run cold. If Dean was still in contact with the other man accused in the wire fraud, it meant he wasn't just lying, he was collaborating. The account I'd seen in the earlier bank documents may have been just one of many. I looked at the envelope again. There was no postage, no label. It had been delivered by hand. Someone was watching. Later that afternoon, I called a friend from college, Maya Hughes, now a defense attorney. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year, but I trusted her more than anyone. "I need advice," I said. "Dean's accusing me of being involved in his fraud case. I haven't been contacted by police, but I want to be ready if it escalates." She didn't hesitate. "Write down everything you remember. Dates, names, conversations. Make a timeline, and don't speak to law enforcement alone, if it comes to that." "Would you represent me?" "I'd be honored," she said, "but I hope it doesn't come to that." I thanked her, hung up, and started the timeline that night. The silence in the house was different now. Kendra didn't ask questions. She folded laundry like a ghost, washed her dishes before I could offer help. She seemed more like a tenant than a guest, shrinking herself even in my presence. "You don't have to do that," I told her, as she wiped down the already clean counter. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." She hesitated. "You know, Dean's parents called me yesterday. Your mom." I froze. "She said I was turning you against your own blood, that you're easily led." I laughed, a sound filled with disbelief. "She's still defending him?" "She said you've always needed someone to blame, that it used to be her. Now it's Dean." I stood up from the table. "I'm done letting them live in my head like that." That night, I drove to Barstow. I didn't have a plan, just a printed out address and a heart full of questions. The RK Investments office was dark, the windows dusty, but parked outside was a black pickup with a familiar dent in the back bumper. Dean's. I parked across the street and killed the engine. The lights inside the RK Investments office were off, but that didn't mean it was empty. The pickup was unmistakable. Dean's rusted black Chevy, with the dent from the time he backed into my mailbox during a quick visit 6 years ago. I sat there for almost 20 minutes. I didn't have a weapon, not even pepper spray. All I had was a phone, a sinking feeling, and a rising sense of fury that burned away my fear. Then the door opened. Dean stepped out, followed by a man in his 60s, tan, thin, with sharp eyes, and a crooked posture like he'd spent a lifetime leaning on bad decisions. They didn't see me at first. They stood near the truck, talking in low voices. Dean looked agitated, pacing with his hands in his hoodie pocket. The man, who I assumed was Russell, was calm, smoking a cigarette like he had nowhere else to be. Dean raised his voice. "You promised I'd be out of this by now." Russell exhaled slowly. "I promised to help you stay clean if you stayed quiet." "You said she wouldn't find out." "She's not your problem," Russell snapped, "unless you make her one." Dean's mouth opened, but then he noticed my car. We locked eyes. He froze. So did I. Russell turned and followed his gaze. Dean muttered something and sprinted toward me. I slammed the car into reverse and peeled away from the curb. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I didn't stop driving until I hit the freeway. When I got home, I found Kendra sitting on the couch, holding her phone. Her face was pale. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Dean called me, said you're trying to destroy him, that you followed him, that you're threatening him." I laughed dryly. "He's the one making threats now." Kendra looked up at me. "He said if you go to the cops, he'll take you down with him." I sat beside her, heart still racing. "Then maybe it's time I do go to the cops." She hesitated. "He's spiraling. If he's working with this Russell guy, he's not just scared, he's dangerous." I nodded. "I'm not going to wait until he burns everything down." The next day, I called Maya. I told her everything. The trip to Barstow, the conversation I overheard, the threat. She was quiet on the other end of the line. Then she said, "You need to file a report, now, and get a restraining order if you can." "Would that protect me?" "It's not about protection," she said. "It's about proof. Paper trails matter when things get messy." By that evening, I had done just that. Filed the report, documented the encounter. Maya was already pulling case files on Russell Kane. RK Investments, it turned out, was linked to 2 previous fraud complaints. Both were settled privately. Dean had dragged me into something bigger than just a bad business scheme. And now there was no going back. The following morning, I arrived at work to find Margaret already waiting in my office. She closed the door behind her and folded her arms. "I got a call this morning. A man named Dean Parker left a voicemail on the front desk line. Said he was deeply concerned about your mental state, that you were making up stories." I didn't flinch. "He's escalating, because I filed a report." Margaret sat down across from me. "Is it true you've involved the police?" "Yes. I didn't want to, but he threatened me. I have documentation. I'm not taking risks." She nodded slowly. "Good. You did the right thing. But I want to be clear. If this goes public, our firm needs to protect its reputation. You understand that, right?" "I do." Margaret leaned forward, her voice lower. "You're not alone in this. I won't let a man like that drag your name through the mud. But if it hits the press, it could get messy. Stay sharp." I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. That afternoon, Maya called. "We've got a break. one of Russell's old employees came forward. Apparently, he was promised a payout for staying silent about a similar fraud case in Fresno 2 years ago. My heart leapt. Is he willing to talk to law enforcement? He already has. The DA's office is quietly collecting statements. This could tie Dean to more than just wire fraud. It might include witness tampering and conspiracy. The noose was tightening. Back at home, Kendra sat on the porch, hugging a cup of tea like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her eyes met mine as I stepped outside. They called again, she said softly. Your parents. What did they want this time? To say they're disappointed, that you've abandoned Dean when he needs you most. Your mother said, if anything happens to him, it'll be your fault. I sat beside her. I've carried the weight of that family my whole life. I'm done carrying it into the fire. Kendra looked over, tears brimming in her eyes. You're braver than me. No, I said gently. I just finally stopped believing I deserved their silence. That evening, I got another envelope in the mail. No return address. Just one photo. Dean and Russell. Shaking hands. A manila folder between them. On the back, one sentence in block letters. He's still moving money. The next morning, I handed the photo to Maya. She studied it carefully, then slid it into a protective sleeve like evidence from a crime scene. We can use this, she said. If it's time-stamped and we can verify the folder's contents, we might be able to prove ongoing fraud. What do we do next? I asked. She didn't hesitate. We go to the DA. By that afternoon, Maya had set up a quiet meeting with an assistant district attorney, someone willing to hear us out before filing anything official. I told them everything from the original $40,000 retainer to the threats, the hidden accounts, and the envelope trail. Maya showed them the photos, the employee statement, and the bank transfer to Russell. When I finished, the ADA leaned back, eyebrows raised. Your brother's got a lot of nerve for someone already under investigation. Will you charge him? Not yet, he said. But I'll tell you this. We've been watching Russell for a while. You've just added fuel to the fire. I left the courthouse shaking, half from nerves, half from adrenaline. For the first time in weeks, I felt the edge of hope. That evening, Kendra handed me her phone. It's from your mom, she said quietly. The message was short. Dean's been arrested. You happy now? I sat down slowly. My hands trembled. Kendra sat beside me. Do you want to call her? No, I whispered. Let her sit with it. Later, the news broke online. A brief report. No mugshot, just a line of text. Local man arrested in connection to investment fraud. Ring under ongoing investigation. The comments poured in. Wasn't that the same guy who ran that fake tutoring business last year? He always gave me weird vibes. Wonder how much money he actually stole. That night, I found myself pacing the hallway, phone in hand, unsure whether to text Margaret before morning. Before I could decide, she called me. I saw the report, she said. You did what you had to do. Will it reflect badly on the firm? She sighed. It might, but not on you. If anything, your honesty is why we'll stand behind you. After I hung up, I walked back into the living room. Kendra looked up. It's over, she said. Not yet, I replied. But the worst of it is. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. But inside, the silence felt like peace. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Dean, not directly. His attorney, however, tried reaching out through Maya. He wants to make a deal, Maya told me. He's willing to sign an affidavit clearing your name completely if you testify on his behalf. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Let me guess. He thinks I'll save him again. Exactly that. What happens if I say no? Then he sinks, alone. I didn't hesitate. Let him sink. Kendra moved out a few days later. She found a small one-bedroom on the east side of town. I helped her carry boxes, offered her my old coffee maker, and left a plant by her window. Before I drove away, she hugged me tightly. "I wouldn't have made it out if I hadn't met you," she whispered. "You did that yourself." "No," she said. "You reminded me I deserved better." That night, I received a letter. Not an envelope, just a folded page slipped under my front door. It read, "You always thought you were better than me. Maybe you were, but don't think this makes you clean. You're just as broken. You just wear better shoes." There was no signature. I burned it in the sink. The following weekend, I went to visit my parents. Not to reconcile, but to say goodbye. They were surprised to see me. My mother opened the door with puffy eyes, my father sitting rigid in his chair like he was bracing for battle. "I heard you testified," she said flatly. "I didn't," I replied. "I told the truth to the people who needed to hear it. I protected myself." "Dean's our son," my father muttered. "I know, and I'm your daughter. But you never made room for both." The silence that followed felt like a verdict. "I came here to say this once," I continued. "I'm not funding him. I'm not defending him. And I'm not going to carry guilt that doesn't belong to me." My mother's lip quivered. "You've changed." "No," I said, standing taller than I ever had in that house. I finally stopped begging to matter. I left before they could answer. In the weeks that followed, Dean took a plea deal. He'd serve time, 2 years minimum, with parole unlikely. The press barely followed up. Another headline swallowed in the sea of bigger scandals. I kept my job. Margaret gave me a raise and assigned me to lead a new audit team. Kendra sent me photos of her redecorated apartment. She had started writing again. And me? I planted new herbs in my garden. Luna watched from the porch. Peace didn't come in a rush, but it came, in moments. And when my parents called again, weeks later, I didn't answer.